Evening, family. Tonight's class will be on humble love, the next segment in this Bible class. And it's not easy to love humbly. It's sometimes it can actually go against the very fiber of our being. We live in a world where people are becoming more self-centered. When surrounded by such attitudes, we also, although are in Christ, can be infected by a spirit of self-centeredness. 1 Corinthians 15, verse 33 tells us, evil company corrupts good habits. Jesus Christ is the founder of our faith, and we should be Christ-centered as opposed to self-centered. Jesus has shown us what it is to love humbly. It is that type of love that builds confidence. It's that type of love that gets us through our struggles. And it's that type of love that makes the whole world take notice. For example, if you were to start a friendship with one of the unpopular kids in school, or maybe even a difficult coworker, this type of love shows the whole world how we come together. Especially this past Saturday, when there were funeral services for Patrick, the funeral director noticed how lovely our singing was. Well, I think it was more of the humble love that we were showing towards our sister Martha and Ellie. Oops, not there yet. So we will be covering these 4 points tonight: the poison of pride, the practice of others first, pattern of Christ, and the promise of grace. Now, in order to fully understand the power of humility or humble love, we must also understand the effects of its opposite, pride. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 18 says, pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. Now, I had to look up this word haughty because I wasn't quite sure what it meant, but it means to be arrogantly superior. Now, the type of pride I'm talking about is not the type of pride you feel when you do a job well done or have accomplished something great in your personal life. I'm talking about the type of pride that poisons, the type of pride that blinds us, isolates us, and sets us up for a fall. When pride blinds us, we can see no one, not even ourselves. So when a person either needs help, we don't see it, or even recognize when we ourselves need help as well. For example, for those of us who are married, husbands, when you come home from a long day of work, are you all about wanting to be served, having maybe your children take off your shoes, your wife rub your feet, demanding, where's my food at? I should be worshiped for the great things I have done today. Likewise, ladies, when you are of a similar mindset, do you feel that you do everything in the house? He only goes out to 10 to 12 hours a day to have fun while I'm stuck here 24/7. He's lucky I even gave him a shot to be married to me. Well, these both are total isolated mindsets. And when you are isolated like that, you're not showing humble love to one another. We could be blinded by pride to the degree that we don't see the value that the other person brings to the table. No one wants to be or should be left alone. Poisonous pride can leave you separated from those you claim to love. Ecclesiastes 4, chapter 4, verse 12 says, a threefold strand is not easily broken. And I don't know about you, but in signs of trouble, I want my people around me. You do not want to find yourself left alone when you have fallen with no one there to pick you up. This is what pride does. It isolates you with no one to help you. Romans 3, verse 23 says, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Pride poisons does not allow us to see how sinful we truly are. We can easily fall into a delusion that because of our mechanics of worship, that we are okay spiritually, maybe even better than the next person sitting next to us. In Luke chapter 18, verses 9 through 14, Jesus shares a parable about the Pharisee and the tax collector. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole scripture, so I'll just give like a brief synopsis of it. Now, the Pharisee looked at his acts of worship and considered himself to be righteous. You know, he fasted and he, prayed and gave, and gave contributions, comparing himself to the tax collector who humbly came forward, knowing that he was a sinner and asking for God's mercy. Jesus says in verse 14, I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exhausted. The tax collector was humble, the Pharisee was not. When we compare ourselves to others and we trust in ourselves instead of God's mercy, or look down on others with a haughty spirit, we are practicing poisonous pride. Now that we know how pride can damage, we're going to go on to see how humble love affects our lives. In Mark chapter 10, the disciples James and John were arguing over status, where they could sit or want to sit in Jesus' glory, even to the dismay to the other disciples. In verse 45, Jesus tells them, or lets them know, it is not about serving, but about being served. That service has to come from a place of love. When Jesus talks about going the extra mile, that's the love mile. You do, or we do, or should do what's beyond required. Young people, children, do you go the extra mile for your parents? Or do we even go the extra mile for our families? The pattern of the world is so that we do just enough to say, I did it. That's hardly out of love. I call that a requirement. But we, as followers of Christ, are held to a different standard. Here are some practicals, or I think are practicals of humble love. When you're playing the game with family or friends and you know that you are really better than them, right? Maybe you let them win sometimes, right? Or play a game that you really don't care to play. I know I gotta confess, when I used to play games with my children, wherever it was, I played to win all the time. I maybe just a little bit to give them a little bit of hope, but I played to win all the times. And I think right before Elijah had went back to school, and he was going to school in Florida, I had beat him in basketball. Kind of, sort of, but I won. The next summer, we go to the men's retreat, and he proceeded to beat me 7 games straight. I could do nothing about it. He won. He got his revenge. But in either case, I wasn't really practicing a lot of humble love because I was playing to win. And it's even when we're here serving others in the building, there's always something that can be done. And as the saying goes, if you don't know, you better ask somebody. Humble love is about putting other people's needs before yours, and in some cases, maybe mental, physical, or spiritual needs, but all done out of love. As I said, there was a saying that if you don't know, you better ask somebody. But also, what one can do is follow the pattern of Christ. In John chapter 13, verses 3 to 5, Jesus washes the feet of his disciples. It reads, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, rose from supper and laid aside his garments, took a towel, girded himself. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel with which he was girded. I don't really know if you kind of understand the significance of feet washing, but they walked everywhere then. They didn't have sidewalks or paved roads. They walked everywhere in dusty roads, muddy. And also the animals shared that road as well. So anything that was in the road probably ended up on their feet. Needless to say, that's the waste left by the animals. Wherever it fell, it was right there. And they didn't have waterproof shoes or even cover shoes. They had sandals. And in order not to track all the outside dirt inside the house, there would be someone there to wash their feet. The job that was usually left to the lowest servant. And it showed the guest, or it was a welcoming gesture, and also showed the guests that they were honored. Now, I don't wear sandals. My feet are jacked up, but I don't wear sandals because I know there's a lot of nasty stuff out there, and I don't want that on my feet. But husbands, would you wash the feet of your guest, or even your children or your wife, or some similar gesture of that? Or how about, that's the members of your household, or any type of gesture of showing, of laying aside how you feel about yourself if you think your status is here, because technically we're all here or here, but would you be willing to lower yourself to wash the feet of your guests, physically or metaphorically? In John chapter 13, verses 12 to 15, Jesus says, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you say, well, for so am I. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one other's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you." So if you don't know what to do, you can always follow the example of Christ. And like I said, feet washing is an example of lowering yourself to serve others. Jesus knew who he was, the Word who became flesh, yet did not find it beneath him to take the position of the lowest servant when his disciples were arriving, when his disciples were arguing over who would be the greatest in heaven. What does this look like for us? And you and I should say. Think of a task that you would least like to do, and do that without being asked to do it. And also, why not looking for a reward? I don't know what that task is. Maybe whether it's in your house or at your job, but whatever that task is that no one likes to do, you do that. And don't look for a reward as you're doing it. Now, my former employer had a plaque in his office, and it read, "It's hard to soar like an eagle when you're surrounded by a bunch of turkeys." And I always thought that was pretty good, because when you think of an eagle, it's a proud, majestic bird of prey. In fact, it's a symbol of this country and part of the Marine Corps symbol as well on their emblems. Turkeys, however, flightless bird, food for the dinner table. I like mine fried personally, but it's not a symbol of greatness at all. In fact, back in the day, to be called a jive turkey was a derogatory statement, and it basically meant you're not cool. I don't know what the statement would be today. Lit, fire. I don't know. That means you're cool, but I don't know. But I don't know what the opposite is. But in Peter, 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 5 to 7, it reads, "Likewise, you younger people, submit yourself to your elders. Yes, all of you, be submissive to one another and be clothed with humility. For God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Therefore, humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, that he may exact you in one time, casting all your care upon him, for he cares for you." There's nothing cool or lit about being prideful or mistreating others with a haughty spirit. There is no reward from God, which is where true and worthy rewards come from. Being humble and putting others first is the greatest. It's showing true greatness. Basically, when one can stand head and shoulders above everyone and is more gifted to them and decides not to force their will or power upon them, that is true greatness. That is true power. When the church is clothed in humility, people don't have to compete. People don't have to carry the burdens alone. And the church becomes a true sanctuary. A humble church is a safe place from being crushed, strong in unity, and compelling to the whole world to see how differently that we live. So in conclusion, what is it to love humbly? Well, it's allowing oneself to take a lower position to benefit others, serving without accolades or rewards, and it is free enough to let God lift you up as opposed to man. There's some questions. These are tonight's questions. I cannot read that or that, but here are tonight's questions for the discussion groups